Pope Francis has been named Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Makes me nervous about the Pope, quite honestly. When the press runs to make him Time Magazine Man of the Year, I am, I'm a little concerned about who this Pope is, and I've gone back and forth on this. We've talked about it. I think most people are a little concerned. If you pay attention to what is really going on, if you know anything about liberation theology, if you know that it came from his part of the world, if you know what a Jesuit is and what they have done to the Catholic Church, and you look at this guy, he's a Jesuit. Now, everybody says, are you a good Jesuit or a bad Jesuit? And he is supposedly a good Jesuit. He seems like a remarkable man. He seems like a man who understands the touch of Christ, if you will, the hand of Christ, how to be good, decent, loving. I love that about him. However, he makes me a little concerned on his Marxist tendencies. And, we were talking about it in the morning meeting today, and I was saying, okay, now, let's just go through this here for just a second. Let's look at what we have. If we had a guy who, when he would give a great speech, when he was on prepared remarks, he would be really, really good. For instance, let's say you're giving a speech at a convention, and somebody writes it, and you're really good. But when you're not on prepared remarks, Marxism starts to creep into your language. When you're asked questions by people, you start to say things like, look, I don't want to hurt you. I just think that, redistribution of wealth isn't so bad. The president's prepared remarks are always great. But when he writes something, it is like dreams from my father. When he says something, it is always like, redistribution of wealth. That's what's going on with this Pope. When he is off the cuff, he talks about redistribution of wealth. When he has had someone else prepare a radio address for him, it's not redistribution of wealth, and it's clear. When he writes something himself, the latest thing that was out was all about how bad capitalism is. That's the first thing that he has penned himself. So who is this guy? Well, with Time Magazine making him the Person of the Year, and this is the first thing that went off, the alarm bells that went off in our heads when we first watched him get elected. First, they were a little hostile. Who is this guy? The press, immediately. Well, what is he going to be like on this and that? And who is he exactly? And then all of a sudden, as if by magic, they fell in love with him. Before he even made it to the balcony, they fell in love with him. Well, I hear that he's much more moderate, and he's a friend of the people. And all of a sudden, everybody in the press loved him. And that's when Pat and Stu and we were sitting in the office, and we all looked at each other, and I went, uh-oh, what do they know that we don't know? How come all of a sudden the press loves this guy? Now, the other angle, the other way they could have gone for Time Magazine Person of the Year, they were considering Miley Cyrus. What a joke that is. Person of the Year, Miley Cyrus.
I think there's only one clear.
No, I think there's two. And I would have considered splitting it myself.
I mean, there's a clearer one of those two. I think the obvious choice is Ted Cruz. I mean, was there anybody, whether you love him or hate him,
Kathleen Sebelius.
Was there anybody more talked about than Ted Cruz?
Kathleen Sebelius.
And she'd be number two.
I think you could go for. I think you could split it. Ted Cruz, Kathleen Sebelius. Because if you like one, you hate the other. But those are the two You know, Kathleen Sebelius and what she is implementing, and Ted Cruz and what he is trying to prevent, those two are going to affect not only your life, but every life on the planet. Because as the American healthcare system goes down the crapper, either is the greatest thing since sliced bread, either is somehow or another the first time that Marxist principles actually work in a healthcare system. Either it's the greatest thing, and it does fundamentally transform the world in a positive way, if Kathleen Sebelius and the president are right, or if Ted Cruz is right, it destroys. How much money are we going to be sending over to Africa for AIDS? How much cheap medicine are we going to be producing for the rest of the world? We pay high prices, but Americans, you should understand, it's only because you're the richest 1% of the world. So of course you're paying high prices and the rest of the world is paying lower prices for their prescription drugs, but that's only because you're the top 1% of the world. Don't you like it when people gouge the rich? So those two are going to affect your life, your job, your children, your health, and the health of everyone on the planet. It's either that or Pope Francis? Now, maybe Time Magazine just didn't want the controversy, but I don't buy that at all. They love the controversy. The reason why they didn't pick Ted Cruz is because they don't want to give him any more power. They don't want to make him into anything. I mean, they'll put Hitler on. They did make Hitler and Mussolini the man of the year. Now, Hitler, they didn't make him man of the year in a positive way, but Mussolini, they did. But remember, progressives are fascists. They are for fascism. Congratulations. So they put those guys on. They considered Assad. But I can tell you right now, they may have put Ted Cruz in the little pool to have his name looked at, but nobody seriously considered him. Nobody seriously considered him. And he's the guy who's going to affect our life, your life, much more than anybody else.
And Ted Cruz works for both sides, by the way. Because the left would look at Ted Cruz as the example of how evil conservatives are, how they're shutting down the government, all the lies they've been told by the media. So it would work for them, and it would work for us. The big issue here for conservatives, probably Obamacare for the year, and Ted Cruz has been the guy standing up to it. I mean, he would make a really sensible choice.
That's why the Blaze has selected, unbeknownst to the Blaze, Man of the Year, Ted Cruz.
Wow!
Yes.
Congratulations, Ted!